Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another week of AVX Live. I'm Joe Gilderson, and this is my co-host, Ryan Finch.
Hello, hello.
Ryan, I kind of feel like I've seen you a lot today.
Yeah, too much.
Yeah,
Too much.
I tend to agree with you there. Today, you'll notice I have a different background. This is
And
my
a different
first.
haircut, by the way.
I did get
noticed.
I did get a haircut. That's nice you noticed. I'm actually in my home office, so this is a new experience. You know, we don't have any Patriots or Red Sox material here, but
That's for the best. That's
we're working on it. Soon, maybe a big Celtics banner right across the back.
ew.
But we're not there yet. By the way, they're doing very well. In case you're not keeping up with them, that's all.
I was not. Thank you very much.
Well, listen, Ryan, we have had some pretty great guests in the last few weeks, including last week's guest for our 10th episode, Dr. Marsha Gordon. Now, we knew Marsha was going to be tough to follow. So we decided we should go on an entirely different path today. And so we have a new discussion today. You know, we've had a lot of things heating up in terms of hybrid discussions. And while we've had some quick conversations about hybrid in the past, I think it still bears a lot of discussion and new conversation because there's so many variables. But Ryan, why don't you start by just telling us how would you describe what a hybrid event is for our audience?
That is a wonderful question. And in general, the hybrid event is any event where there is some combination of both live or in-person audiences or live or in-person presenters. So really, there are four areas of focus that are potential on any hybrid event: in-person audience, in-person presenters, virtual audience, virtual presenters. Is that, Joe, do you think that's an accurate description?
I mean, I think that's a real mouthful. I got to tell you, that's
Is.
virtual here, virtual there, in person here, in person there. I would say that's an accurate description, though, because those are your inputs, so to speak, for the AV world, right? Those are where we have to start with.
Exactly.
So if we're saying that the in-person and virtual audiences or in-person and virtual presenters are kind of our starting point, I think we're going to have to dig a little bit more into that. But why don't we discuss platforms first? The infamous word platform that everybody throws around. I got a platform, but by the way, this is our platform right here.
This is our platform.
Yeah,
exactly.
But that's a different platform, I think. The two that we've seen the most and certainly had a million discussions over, and there are literally, I think there's about 150 of them right now. But the two that we've seen the most are certainly Zoom and Hopin. Hopin are the two. Those are the two that we're kind of spend the most time in. We're not saying that any of the others aren't equal or are not good. They just happen to be where we've spent the most time and where we've had the best experiences because we have definitely demoed a lot of them. But, we come from a production perspective. And so each platform or each software is a little bit different. It's designed for a particular crowd, I think. Right. But maybe we should start with some high-level kind of pros and cons on our friends at Zoom and Hopin. What do you think?
I think that's a wonderful place to start, Joe.
Well, let's start with Zoom.
Your graphic was a little late there.
Late. All right, I was a little slow on the draw, but
I heard a little clicking behind the scenes, but but great start. As far as pros and cons, it's definitely a good place to begin the conversation. And I guess we'll start with one at a time, right? So we'll start with Zoom, and then we'll work our way into Hopin because really they're two very different platforms and they do two very different things, or should I say they could fill two very different needs. So starting with Zoom. Our pros are probably, pretty well known to most people at this point. First of all, it is widely familiar. And in anything virtual, the first thing that we're talking about and the first thing that we're considering is our audience going to know how to use this? So Zoom definitely gets the check on that one. It's also widely accessible. Meaning that it's not, locked down to certain regions. It is a global organization. We talk about infrastructure a lot. The infrastructure behind Zoom is seriously robust. You'll be able to use it basically anywhere in the country, anywhere in the globe, and you should basically have a pretty consistent experience. There are a few countries, due to some sanction things that we're not going to get into, that maybe it's not accessible, but by and large, if you're watching this, you're probably not in one of those countries anyway. In any case, we don't have to worry about firewalls. Firewalls is something that comes up, a lot, especially with corporate groups. There are certain platforms that we ask our presenters to come in on, and ultimately, especially when they're in some sort of corporate environment, whether it's an office building or a managed IT solution, or a location with a managed IT solution, firewalls are things that we're going to have to accommodate. In general, we've found much fewer obstacles on the road to success. Ultimately, when we're dealing with Zoom in an app-based environment, so the desktop client or on a smartphone or a tablet, in general, the platforms just have a much easier time getting through those firewalls than, say, coming in on a web browser. So definitely helps there. There is some basic interactivity. So whether you have a partially remote audience that maybe wants to submit their question, that's certainly still something we can do with Zoom. We'll get into some of those details next in terms of actual implementation, but definitely fits the bill there. And then the fact that it is fully accessible on a smartphone or a tablet. Not every platform is set up to work on both. So certainly something worth considering if you expect your audience to have a great deal of participation coming in from one of those devices. Lastly, on the Zoom side, on the pro end of the spectrum, we're also able to enhance the production level inside of Zoom, similar to how we typically work. So we're increasing the production level on our virtual events. Zoom is also an area that we're able to do that on. So that, again, there are others, there are nuanced details with absolutely everything. But those are kind of the big ones that stick out to us. On the cons side, right?
Ooh, are we on cons already?
We're on cons. We are. And Joe, feel free to chime in with your own input here.
Well, if you would like some input, I mean, you seem like you're on a roll, so I didn't want to get in the way,
Joe, are there any pros? Hold on, wait. There you go.
Oh, wow.
Joe, are there any pros that you would like to add in as far as Zoom goes?
Well, I mean,
you better come up with something.
I mean, you kind of put me on the spot, I was supposed to be clicking buttons right here, and you literally put me on the spot. But that's okay. I just think if you always go back to the beginning, the fact that most people know how to use it, other than my father, who is probably watching at this point, he does not know how to use it. But everybody else in the world, the other 340 million people, seem to have some general understanding. As one of our clients said this morning, if you don't know how to use it, you've been living in a cave for the last year. So yes. I think that was a fairly good description. I like the fact that there are really only a few buttons for people to hit. And I think hitting that camera, that mute, people have got a hold of that at this point. The other ones they don't know how to use, but that's why we have jobs. So
exactly. And also, if Zoom is too complex, cut this video off halfway through, because
the other one's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to work out well for you. But in any case, great points. Moving on to the cons end of the spectrum, Zoom is sort of limited in terms of dimensionality, and what I mean by that is it's really set up to do kind of one thing at a time. Maybe you have a meeting where there's a lot of participation, or on the webinar side of the spectrum, maybe it's more of a broadcast with some questions and some feedback coming in, but it's really set up to just do one of those things at a time. Whereas when we get into the next platform, you'll see that there are other things that could be happening at the same time. It's a little bit more of a holistic approach or a holistic experience. But in any case, again, Zoom, limited in dimensionality. It's also lower resolution in general. when we broadcast an event, when we stream, we can stream in 1080 plus, whatever, if we have the bandwidth, we can go up to higher resolutions. But in general, 1080 is kind of our standard in terms of high quality broadcast, 30 frames per second for my tech people out there. We have control over the bit rate and it's kind of a little bit more of a structured environment for us. And so we're able to get some quality. Now, there is typically some drawbacks to that, which I'm not going to get into right this second because we're talking about Zoom. Zoom is not that. Zoom is point to point. It is immediate, which I guess actually could fall in under the pros column.
Yeah, I would call that a pro.
Right. It's real time. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Latari. I'm glad somebody's watching.
And it's not my dad because he was offended by what I said, so he's already turned off.
Well, if he wasn't able to use Zoom, you telling me that Facebook,
Oh yeah, he knows how to use Facebook. Absolutely.
Okay. There you go. Facebook, another option.
Put it next to Zoom. And Zoom can go to Facebook, so that's a win-win.
That is also true. Oh, man,
Thank you.
We have to talk about that now too. Any case, lower resolution in general, just keep that in mind. So in terms of some graphics that we're creating, in terms of the production level, we'll probably scale the graphics down or just design them for a slightly different, end resolution. Specifically, fine text. What may look good in a 1080 high definition video may not look as good inside of Zoom. You may not be able to read that level of detail in the content if we're using Zoom as the means of distribution at that point. And then lastly,
Ryan, can I just say something about that one point?
Please.
I mean, because I'm already sick of hearing you talk, to be honest.
Me too.
But I don't want to give our secret away, but we have a secret sauce that we can actually get better resolution than most people. I'm not going to give away any secrets here in this show, but let's just say we can get a better resolution going out there than 95% of our clients. And that's why they hire us.
That is a bold statement.
I'm done.
But it is true. Yeah, see you later. No, but it is certainly true. It is still not. I will say this though. It is still not 1080. There are actually accounts that are cleared for 1080. You have to jump through some flaming hoops and talk to Zoom, and there's some approvals that need to get put in place.
Wait a minute. You can talk to Zoom?
Well,
no, you can't. We'll put that on the con list. Let's put them on the con list.
Yeah, exactly. But in general, again, we are still getting better resolution as a typical broadcast as opposed to using Zoom. So again, something to consider. The last one, and I have to make this point because there's a buzzword coming, that is Zoom fatigue.
Dun, dun, dun.
Zoom fatigue.
I knew you'd have to sneak a buzzword in there someplace.
Well, here we go. Ed Willick, and this man knows a lot. Having 1080p Zoom meeting and webinar account like the one I have makes Zoom's much more usable and friendly platform. That is certainly true. Again, in most cases, Zoom is a lower resolution. If you have an account that's been cleared for takeoff, like Ed has, then you might get some better experience. Again, I do think that's kind of a rarity at this point. I know Ed has it. I don't see a lot of them floating around at this point. And in terms of accessibility, what people will have access to easily and quickly, not something I expect a whole lot of. So, there we go. I like buzzwords.
Well,
buzz potential.
Of course he does. And just for everyone, you can really get some detail next week. Ed Willick is going to be on. He'll be joining us, and he knows a lot. So
yes, he does. I'm interested in learning more. So
I can't wait
to bring Ed on. Absolutely. So, but in general, so those are, again, top level. There are plenty of other nuanced details. Every program is different, and there are certain things that make, Zoom or otherwise a better fit or not based on the individual, components in your recipe of an event. Look at that metaphor.
Wow. Secret sauce recipe. We're really digging into that. I mean, who needs a guest?
We're off the cuff. We're unscripted, and you're going to get unadulterated ridiculous.
And there's Julia Salem, Julia Emmerich. My apologies. Enjoying the conversation.
There you go.
Well, see, I did, but she's been Emmerich for quite a while. She's been Emmerich for quite a while. So.
Well, Joe, how about this? Why don't we've been talking a lot. Why don't we talk about the actual setup? Like, what does that hybrid event, how does that come together from an AV perspective, using Zoom before we move on to the next platform?
Well, I can tell you how we've used it in the preliminaries. And, in the very beginning, of course, again, it doesn't take up a lot of bandwidth, number one, on site. So that becomes a little bit of a plus, because some of the venues we've gone into, nobody really knows what their internet bandwidth is or their capacity. And I'm referring to some country clubs and some other places that typically wouldn't have a lot of internet related events going on. Right. They're designed for something else. But that became kind of an easy way to stream out. Like, they were doing voting and different things that would go on for membership. And when a lot of people were not able to come together, we could actually they could have a small crowd in the venue in person, and we could then take that image via camera and sound and mics and send that out online. And we did use Zoom several times in doing that in the very beginning, because it was just an easier format for people to deal with. It also took up very little bandwidth. So it worked out pretty well. Again, you do have a lower quality. I don't think there's any way around that. It was a lower quality, but it was very effective, And so that was one way from the audience perspective to send that out to everyone, and they could all watch it. They had a link. It was very cut and dry.
Right. Well, and I guess one interesting comment that just came in here: how is Zoom's customer service? Well, I can't say it's terrible, because I have had some good experiences on it. It's all been via, like the chat on the website. But in general, I've had some decent experiences. It's just not immediate. It's not somebody there to hold your hand to help you with it directly. And so maybe that's kind of a plug for us, where, that is something that we're prepared to help with, is how to facilitate that transition from in-room to Zoom and beyond.
Well, that makes sense, and Ed popped up. He had another note right here. Yeah, well, that becomes our role. And we've had this discussion with many of our marketing peers, and there's a reason that people go to a marketing company instead of doing their social media posts. And there's a reason that, you would use a production team in this type of capacity, because you're trying to get more out of it, and you're trying to focus on the message, which I think ultimately is what every client is really shooting for. On the presenter side, we've certainly seen it on that. Because of the wide variety of events we're working on, we've had to bring many people into whatever the event was, whether it's in the room and in person, or online into some other streaming event.
Or both.
And sometimes it's both at the same time. But, because of some of the reasons you've mentioned, where some people just couldn't access other programs. Yeah. Just from that simple, or they knew how to use this. Well, my executive knows how to use this, and they really don't want to introduce anything new. And so we say, fine, we'll bring them in on Zoom. We'll put them on the screen and for the in-person audience, or we'll route them online so that they are now joining whatever else is going on in the online experience.
Yeah. So one thing I think is important to consider is, what does this look like in the room from a build-out standpoint, from a production standpoint? In general, right, we're talking about, we obviously have the AV production in the room like we would typically have prior to all of this. We'd have our screens, our visuals, our sound, our speakers. The presenters have microphones, the ones that are physically there. That kind of mixture is still present for whatever portion of the audience is in person. Even if there is no audience, we still need a way to show the presenters what is going on. What are the audience seeing? So one way or another, there is some sort of AV setup that's going to happen in the room. And so you should consider that there are people who are specifically there to facilitate that. So we have a team just for that, right? That's just a starting point. And then for the virtual audience, we have a camera. That camera may or may not have a camera operator behind it. That is feeding into, we'll call it the Zoom computer. We have the audio is coming from the microphones for the people on stage, also going into the Zoom computer. All of that is going out to Zoom, just like you'd be looking at me like this, right, in Zoom. And instead, you're seeing the camera image of the room, of the stage, and the microphone, which may, be down here, or it may be, something like that. That is kind of how we're sending that to the room. But again, you're increasing the footprint a little bit. We have the camera operator, and now we also have a separate position for the Zoom, for the sending of the Zoom, for the sending of the Zoom feed, rather, for the virtual audience. And then when we talk about content, for visuals, presentations, things like that, there's a couple of different ways we can go about that. Either we're showing them, we're replacing the camera image. So maybe you're looking at me and then all of a sudden now you're not looking at me. You're looking at, the content inside of Zoom for the virtual audience. Or maybe we share our screen, just like you've probably seen happen in Zoom before. We share our screen and then it's kind of a picture-in-picture display. There are pros and cons to both. There are times where each makes sense. And then there's a level of coordination.
Look, I'm sharing my screen.
Oh, see,
I'm sorry.
Behind the curtain. We didn't even get to this yet. Oh my gosh.
I know, but you were talking so much, though.
Oh, okay. All right, fine.
Well,
do you have anything to contribute here?
No. Please continue.
Okay,
please.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So in any case, the footprint in the room is going to be a little bit larger for the facilitating the virtual side of things, and that goes double if we also have virtual presenters, because for a virtual presenter, we may use Zoom to bring them in. And maybe that feeds into our video switcher and that goes up to the screens. So now the people in the room are seeing Zoom feeds on the screens inside the room. Certainly doable. But what happens now for the people who are watching virtually? In many cases, we're actually using 2 different Zoom meetings or Zoom webinars or whatever it ends up being, where we're bringing our virtual presenters in on one and we have our virtual audience on the other. So Joe, what would you say happens to the footprint at that point in the room?
Well, it increases, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. The fact that you have these multiple things going on at once, I mean, honestly, it sounds kind of confusing to me. I'm glad I'm not in charge of that. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. But it just, it is just some planning. That's all. You just have to do your pre-planning. You figure some extra things out. The fact that you can reach so many more people and that they may be more comfortable in a certain audience is fantastic. Like, it really opens the world up to you, sometimes literally,
right.
And we joke around about the presentation and the conference we were on in Poland, but I mean, they had, I think it was 60 different countries that were on that particular conference. There's something to say about that. I mean, that is pretty impressive,
Absolutely. Widely accessible. Yeah.
Well,
what do you say? Should we move on here?
I think we should move on because there is another platform, right, that we've seen a lot of. And I think we probably want to talk about Hopin a little bit.
All right. So I guess we should kind of go about this the same way, right? We'll talk about pros and cons, and then we'll get into some of the finer points, some of the details. So I would venture to say that not as many people are familiar with Hopin as, say, Zoom. And that kind of makes sense. Hopin is a very different thing. It's not as much of a one-to-one, a meeting program. It's not as much of a webinar as it is a combination of things, or a conference platform, if you will. So basically, you can have a multifaceted event. It can do a whole lot more than just Zoom. So there are a lot more options for you to get your messaging across, to have multiple things happening at the same time, to add value for your sponsors in different places, and to create a much different experience overall than Zoom. And so, speaking back to the Zoom fatigue, I would put in the pro column for Hopin, I would put the it's not the same thing that you've been to 17,000 times.
So it's not Zoom. That becomes the plus, that it's not Zoom.
I guess so. Yeah, in so many words.
It's not very eloquent, but okay. We'll go with it.
No, but that's not really what the show is, Joe.
This is true.
In any case, it is also immediate in terms of point-to-point, real-time, right? We can still communicate one-on-one. There's no latency there as it would be in more of a typical broadcast. Or we can boost the production level and we can have something that's more, by the way, I saw this. I was waiting for you to see that.
Yeah, well, I didn't see it yet, but now I saw it. A pilot fish, huh? That's not very helpful. I mean,
I'm not sure what that is, but I think I get it from the
I know what it is. I mean, I thought it was a shark, but he's saying the pilot fish. Okay, I got it. I got it.
I like it.
Thanks, Mike.
So in any case, let's see, where are we? There we go. It's immediate, point to point. We can boost the production level if you figure there's a main stage. And that made stage can be as produced as we want it. It can be higher resolution. There can be graphics, lower thirds, and all that. We can produce that like a show, kind of like what you're watching right now, and have full control over it. Then you can have other things going on. You can have breakout rooms. You can have exhibit booths. You can have, again, multifaceted, I think is the best way to describe that.
It's a big word.
It is a big word. But I think that kind of gets the point across. It also has an enhanced level of interactivity and connection, both for Q&A and questions and chat. But really, the thing I want to point out is people who are in the room can talk to people who are outside of the room, and they can have conversations with each other. They can connect. They can video chat. You're really creating a bridge between your in-person audience and your virtual audience, and in a way that you don't have to actively manage it. It doesn't get in the way of your show. You can just let exchange of information and ideas happen organically. And ultimately, that's what we want out of a conference anyway, right?
Well, I think that's the future. I mean, I think that's the direction. It may not be fully developed at this exact second, but that's really where people are going.
Well, everything is constantly updating and getting better and improving and adapting to fit new needs. And I think the hybrid environment is certainly going to be that. But there are also cons. I mean, I know.
Oh boy.
And one of which was just pointed out in the comments here from Mr. Dardano. It is a little more complex. There's more of a learning curve than Zoom. There are great functionality, just like Mike says here. But there's just it's a different thing, and it's more of a self-guided experience where you may be able to get a little bit lost at times, but in general, it's user-friendly and intuitive enough that after a few minutes, we usually say people need a few minutes to get their bearings, and then it's okay.
Listen, if we go back to where Mike started, where he likes buzzwords, I mean, it's no wonder that he's getting lost, to be honest. But no, I do agree with you. In our experiences for the events we've done with Hopin, a lot of times the first 10 or 15 minutes, clients they're having a little bit of a hard time trying to figure it out because it's not Zoom, like you already mentioned, right? Which I think was in the pros column, but It's not Zoom. There are new buttons, and so they need a little bit of guidance for the first 10 to 15 minutes. But after that, and we did one event that was over 3.5 hours long, and you didn't hear anything from anybody. They were enjoying and engaging and were actually part of the event. It was no longer technology was in the way. Because I think, they probably recognize that it's something different for most people. And the experience then becomes the same. The way the control system is laid out, you have navigation on the left side. You have, we'll call it communication and engagement on the right side. And in the middle becomes your workspace. And that's the same experience over and over and over. So to Mike's point, I mean, yes, we have heard certainly in the beginning when people have started an event is when they might look for some extra help. But after that, they're usually pretty good. And they're on their own at that point. They're pretty good at it, though.
We also recommend getting ahead of it too in the communication with the attendees. Hey, this is speaking to my next con. This is really a computer-based event. This is less of a tablet, or a smartphone type of thing. You won't get the full feature set. There is an app. It does work. You can see the content. You can experience the content. You could message. You can chat, so on and so forth. But when it comes to being on camera and actively engaging, that's where the smartphones and tablets are not currently set up to accommodate that. I expect that will change in the near future. But for the time being, this is a computer-based event, and you are in a browser. And anytime we're in a browser, con number 3, anytime we're in a browser, there are potentially firewalls that we have to navigate. And so in some cases, we'll find, again, back in a managed IT solution environment or like a corporate office building, attendees may have trouble accessing content or sharing their camera and video, or camera and sound rather. So again, something to consider, definitely worth testing. And by and large, we've had a large number of people find success with it. So I don't think it's something that should hold you back if it is the right platform. It's just one of those things that you have to get your hands on it and try it out. Speaking of getting your hands on it and try it out.
Oh, is that my cue?
That's your cue.
Oh, man. Somebody's got to write some scripts. We need Hillary to write us a script or something.
That's right. That would help.
All right, let's see. Are we going to take a look at one?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, let's do it. So here we come. Right here is an event, which is a public event. That's why I'm allowed to show it. So please, everyone join, donate, be a part of the event. Our client will thank you very much. But this is basically your homepage. So you come in, you arrive to some graphics. It's telling you about the event, in this particular case, who's being honored. They have, again, some other graphics or pieces to the puzzle, sponsors, schedule, and in their case, they have vendors. Go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say, I really like the schedule aspect of it, especially in advance. We just had a group that was really interested in having their attendees register one time, but being able to integrate with specific sessions so that just, again, if you're attending a virtual conference, maybe you just want to see the main stage content, or maybe there's one workshop that you really want to attend, but you can't really block out the entire few days. For an in-person, obviously, not as much of a challenge. But when we're talking about hybrid events, for anyone who's not physically there, they may really only want that one session, and they want to be able to make it convenient. They want it in their calendar. So there you go. You register one time, and you can add that specific event to your calendar. When that time hits, when you get the little update in my corner, I get it. It's like, oh, your event started now. You're late for your meeting. I can just, boom, click that, and I follow the link, and I'm right in. So there's a lot of different points of navigation, which tends to help people not get very, or find their way back to where they need to be very quickly. And I see a comment here from Mike, the Business Council of Westchester's Virtual Business Expo. Is certainly a wonderful example of how that can come together. And of course, yes, Mike had a problem with his camera because of Google settings, and I did walk him through it. So pat on my back. Thank you very much, Mike. Much appreciated.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Can we continue?
We can continue. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, I just had to pause for a thank you.
I know. I see what you did there. Yes. Now the point about checking your settings, well, that's going to happen with any browser-based program. I don't think today's discussion is going to be that, but I would say it's going to be up top here. You're going to see a little camera up there. So you're going to be looking for a little camera, and that's going to bring you to some settings. Let's just take a look behind the scenes over here. What does this really look like? By the way, I have no idea what's going to happen next. I just want to let you know. All right. So now this event is starting in a few weeks. Okay. But once people are registered, they have access so that they have some information. Again, it's part of the learning process. And if you're someone who's organizing the event, this is good for you, right? You get them in the event, have them register first, they get in their calendars, but then that buys you some time to actually, maybe you can add some more sponsors. Maybe you can sell some more vendor booths. It gives you more time to continuously add on. So that happens to be one of the things I like about it. But everything navigationally is on the left side. And we use this just for a networking experience for the United States Air Force. And so we like to use the term navigation now. That seemed to work with them. So navigation is on the left. And
your coordinates?
Yeah, I gave them the coordinates. In their particular case, they did not have all these buttons. All 5 of them were not there. We're not talking about dozens. We're talking about 5.
Right.
They really only had 2. So that's a customizable thing. But either way, there's graphic, there's more information to add to your calendar. There's chats that are going on all the time. You can create polls. You can see different people that are signed up and attended to the event.
Here's an interesting premise too. If you have everyone register, through this event, now you have the possibility of anyone in person also being able to chat with your remote audience, and they could video chat with your remote audience. So that there's definitely an exchange that's possible there that isn't possible on, say, Zoom, at least directly, at least within the confines of your event.
It's a great point, because it's one of the reasons that we partnered with Hopin, because we were trying to look ahead to the future and say, all right, how are people going to interact when there are 2 audiences? And they seem to have the most resources and the most tools. And I liked that it wasn't too busy, because we looked at dozens of different software programs.
Right.
Some of them were a lot. They're just, even all the movement and, going on, it was just a lot.
It just increases the learning curve, and again, with the feature set here, it's robust enough to be able to do a lot of different things, but simple enough that it only takes a few minutes for, an everyday person seeing it for the first time to get the lay of the land and the general workings of it. And we have seen that firsthand. People are able to kind of pick it up quickly. And some of the other options that we've seen, not all of them, but some of the other options we've seen have been, we'll say too complex, at least in our opinion. Now, again, because this is a hybrid event, maybe our main stage is the live feed coming right from the in-person stage, and maybe that is where our production level is the highest. Again, we have some people in the room who are producing that, camera image and maybe putting graphics over it, sending that to the main stage, and you're watching something that looks like, a high quality production. And then when we get to breakout rooms, could you, just as well have a streaming operator and some, some technology in each room to facilitate a live stream in each room? Yeah, absolutely could. Now that certainly scales your production level in terms of cost pretty quickly, but it's certainly an option. And then you could do the same thing as the main room on a lesser scale in each room. Or you could also take advantage of a virtual track where maybe you have content that's just for your virtual audience, right? Maybe there's a workshop that works really well in person with everybody in the room, and you do the same thing for the virtual only crowd. And maybe you have a separate person who's kind of running things in that space. That way, while things aren't technically the same content, you're still getting a quality of experience that's beyond just sitting in front of a screen and absorbing, right?
Well, that's it. Everybody is going to need to provide a little more engagement and interactivity. So that's what that's the number one question we get asked right now is, how can I make it a little more interactive? How can I get my audience involved? There are other ways to do that. I know yesterday I saw a release on the Hopin side that was talking about they have a new gaming integration, and I haven't seen it yet, but they're making constant updates.
Right.
In the last 2 months, there's been a lot of updates going on.
So
and they're all important things.
There, Mike. It is constantly updating, and that's kind of across the board. Even Zoom will have new updates, and every platform is going to continuously improve. And whether it's security features or feature enhancements, we've been having to kind of stay on our toes just to stay ahead of the curve, and that's what our role is. So we'll continue to do that. And again, this forum is really to help keep keep the big wheel turning, I guess you could say, and helping people make sure that they can use these tools effectively. But what do you say, Joe? I mean, is that a fair rundown of these two platforms? Should we summarize anything? It looks like you're kind of you got these banners ready to go, and you want to cycle through them, or what?
I don't know. I mean, do I want to do that twice? I already did it. I'm just asking. I don't know.
Fine. Wow.
No, I do. I think that it's a good summary. There's a million details to each one. One of the things that people forget about, there's a lot of things you can do in Zoom, right? To go back to Zoom for a second, many of the things that you don't know about are in the settings. And so you have to go through the settings and just make sure that things are enabled properly.
Right.
Because you may actually be able to do something that you want to do. But it is certainly, I look at Zoom as I'm showing the audience what I want. Whereas the Hopin experience is really driven, I don't want to compare it to a self-service station, but it's really designed to be more like an expo experience where I walk into this room. Now I choose to attend this session, right, or now I go and see this exhibitor, and that's where it came from. You can customize it and do other things to it, but all these programs were designed to do one thing first. And then we've been making them do other things. So Zoom was designed to be a meeting and a video conference platform. And it's exceptional at that. Whereas I think Hopin was designed to be a little bit more of they're even changed their language to be a virtual venue. Everybody's making adjustments as we go along throughout this pandemic timeframe. But yeah, I think you summed it up very nicely. I'm glad I didn't have to do all that work, and that I was a pilot fish, as some would say.
I don't know what it is, but I like it.
I don't like it. I don't think it's a great comment, to be honest. I mean, I'm considering banning him from our program.
I don't know if we could do that because on Facebook it's a public forum, Joe. I mean, we can't exclude people.
I know, that's how my dad can watch.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There you go. Widely accessible.
All right. Well, let's look through. So let's just start back at the top. Again, this is only Zoom and Hopin. There are many, many other platforms. Many of them are very, very good. We're just not as familiar with a lot of those. But let's look at, again, back to some of the quick pros on Zoom. Everybody uses it, certainly widely accessible because it's an application. Just keep in mind that application requires an update fairly frequently. We've had 2 in the last 6 or 7 days. Right. It's a very quick thing to do. It's not complicated in any way, but it usually allows the audience to see certain features or use certain features that are improvements. I mean, in almost every case. Some other pros. There's really not a lot of issues with firewalls. I don't really hear too much of that from the corporate side. It certainly has the basic interactivity. You can have breakout rooms. You can communicate via chat. Everybody's camera can be turned on. You can speak. You can see, up to 49 people on one screen, which is a little tiny box. But either way, you can do that. And it is fully accessible on mobile. I think it's one of the best when it comes to the mobile. Ryan, you want to do the cons?
I would love to do the cons. Keep me in the negative column. That's great.
Pilot fish.
Exactly. Right. It goes both ways, I guess. Limited in capability, right? It is sort of designed to do one particular thing at a time. Again, not multifaceted. And of course, in general, lower resolution, especially when we're talking about graphics and text and whatnot. There are ways to unlock higher resolutions. Again, people like Ed Willick and ourselves have resources like that. But in general, most people will find it has lower resolution for them. And is also a little bit more taxing, or should I say emotionally taxing. Zoom fatigue, right? It's a hot topic buzzword. Certainly something to keep in mind because you are kind of just watching, right? You can send in a chat, but you're really just sitting in front of your computer and watching, and maybe your camera's on. But again, to Joe's point, we're telling you what to see at that point.
All right. Do we want to go into
pros Hopin?
Yeah, I'm on the positive side. Now we're talking. All right. Hopin is certainly more of a multifaceted type of event. There really are a lot of ways to interact between chatting, one-on-one. You can actually form small groups. Like if you were in person at an event and you pulled 2 of your colleagues to the side, you can technically do that within Hopin. It's kind of a neat feature. And then there's sessions, there's expo booths. There's a number of ways for you to communicate with people and interact. And then, we can actually take the program we're using right now with the branding on it and some of these, different buttons that we're putting on screen here. We can send that directly. It integrates directly with Hopin. So there are a lot of ways to boost the production level. I think this is the future, that people who are in the room can have conversations with people who are out of the room. And I think that's one of the big ones. I don't think it's perfect yet. And part of the reason I don't think it's perfect is because of the con. And this is where you come in.
Yeah, I saw that coming. Stop clicking the button. I'll do it. There we go. It's a computer event. It's not as good on tablets or smartphones. You just get a limited feature set in general. But you can still watch. You can still, comment, chat, engage. You're just not able to be on video as of yet. Again, Hopin is making updates continuously, so hopefully that'll be something coming up soon. And of course, the other big con being firewalls getting in the way at times. Again, it's a browser-based platform. The pro side of that, if I can sneak one in, is that everything is in general the same for everyone. Things are in the same place. It's not like, well, if you're on mobile, your button may be over here. Things are fairly consistent. But because it is going through a browser, again, corporate environments, office buildings, things like that, firewalls could become an issue. So always test, always make sure it works from the area that either your presenters or large groups of your audience will be participating from, and just make sure that that is good ahead of time.
Excellent. Excellent.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, Joe, I think that is
just I have one last thing, because I don't want everybody to think I'm a pilot fish. Okay, one last browser comment. Firefox, Chrome, almost everything works on it. Internet Explorer, Edge, almost nothing works on it. So just keep that in mind if those are your standards, that a lot of things don't work on it, or there's some functionality, but not all of the functionality. And it just gets a little harder to troubleshoot, because when you actually go through what each of the software lists out as what they can do, it's like a big, missing link once you get to the Internet Explorer and Edge side. So I see that Dana has commented in. I think her great job is really referring to my part, but that could just be my perspective.
What is it? What fish? Pilot fish. Pilot fish.
Yeah, pilot fish.
That's going to come up again, I promise you.
Oh, and look at Rochelle has commented in as well. We're really reaching a lot of people today.
There we go. I like the engagement. And Joe, you know what I didn't do?
What didn't you do?
What I didn't do? I didn't tell people to smash that subscribe button.
Oh,
comment, share, subscribe, please. Helps us out so much. If you could show a little love on any of the channels, whatever you're watching it on, that would help us out tremendously. So please do. And of course, please come back and check us out next Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Because even when we have nothing prepared as of 2 hours ago, we come up with something. And I think it's something of value. Yeah, there you go.
We just blew some minds. Listen, Ryan, it's time.
Yeah,
let's get out of here. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And we will see you right here, same time next week. Until then, adios.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.